Well, hi. I was 20 years old when I almost went into a BDSM cult. English is not my native language, so I wrote down everything, translated it, and I'll try to read it for you so you can know this story. And I will also try to uncover manipulative techniques that cults usually use on people, so you won't fall for it like I did. I was 20. Old enough to think I was an adult, young enough to believe I couldn't possibly get manipulated. Back then I was deeply into shibari, rope art, and I had already studied safety, dynamics, psychology, and all you need for being shibari master and practicing this with your partner or somehow. I even taught a small workshops. I truly believed that knowledge protects you. It doesn't. Not when the manipulation is hidden behind experience and care. That's how I met them. A couple, older, charismatic, confident. They came to one of my workshops and immediately positioned themselves as more experienced. They were not mentors. They clearly didn't want to teach me. They didn't want a student. They wanted access to me as a person, as a young woman. They invited me for coffee to talk about real BDSM. As they said, I was 20. Of course I went. I was 20. Of course I went. The first red flag hit in the first 5 minutes. Literally. They asked where I studied. I answered honestly. And asked back where they worked. Because they were much older than me. They freezed instantly, exchanged gaze, and they said, "You don't get to ask dominance questions. You wait until we decide to share." I remember sitting there thinking that's not how BDSM works. That's not how power exchange works. I'm not even in a dynamic with them. And they already, from the first minutes, started to act as if they were my partners. Only later I realized the truth. They refused to answer because their real jobs meant they absolutely shouldn't have been engaging with someone my age in that context. They had reputations to lose. I didn't.
Cults always start by controlling what you're allowed to know. If someone tells you your questions are disrespectful, you're not dealing with dominance. You're dealing with handlers.
From that moment, everything became a test. Not BDSM tests, psychological ones. They wanted to see how much I would bend for them. At some point, they told me, "Let's check if you are truly a submissive. People your age don't know themselves." The test was humiliating, intentionally. They made me drop into a degrading posture right into the middle of the cafe, hands up like a dog, tongue out. The kind of thing you only do with someone you trust. Of course, if you like it. And I did it. Because I liked that kind of stuff. But to them, my consent didn't matter. The point wasn't the act, it was dominance without negotiation. When I passed their test, they smiled and said, "Interesting, most fail. But don't get excited, you're probably not a real submissive." Everyone thinks they are until they taste pain. You talk like a bottom, but you're actually a masochist. I knew my preferences better than they ever could. But suddenly I found myself doubting. What if they're right? They are older. They have more experience. Maybe I really don't know myself well enough. That's how grooming starts.
The fastest way to break someone is to make them doubt their own self-knowledge. If you can rewrite who they think they are, you can own everything that comes next.
I'm going to keep the rest of this part safe for YouTube, but the actual mechanics of how identity breaking works, I put that on Patreon. It's a breakdown that might help someone avoid what I didn't.
Then came the collar talk. And this talk, for me, actually, that was the scariest thing in all this story, to be honest. Even now, I'm a bit shocked, even though it was a long time ago. They told me that a collar was sacred. It had to be earned. That once you put it on, your life changes. They spoke about a previous girl, how she cried when they threatened to take her collar away, how she shook, trembled, and how she lived for their approval. And they said it with pride. I remember feeling something cold sliding down my spine, because that wasn't BDSM anymore. That was dependency, emotional addiction, and conditioning. And then came their opportunities. They told me once I was ready. One moment. Here I have my dog, and she clearly wants attention. And then came the opportunities. They told me that once I was ready, they'd take me to elite BDSM events, private parties, and secret gatherings. But I wasn't allowed to meet someone from the community on my own. No one will treat you well, they said. They'll chew you up. Only we can protect you, they said. And that's true. That's true that they told me that. Isolation. It's classic cult tactics. And I was shocked when I started to understand it. recently when I remembered about this story. Okay. They even insisted that I shouldn't talk to other dom or doms because you're not ready, you don't know the rules. You will embarrass yourself. Again, it's not BDSM. That's control, not in a good, trusting, safe way.
When someone tells you the world is dangerous without them, what they mean is, I need you helpless to keep control.
We eventually had a session with them both, and the session was completely wrong. Not dangerous to the point of hospital, but wrong in a deeper way as an intention. They used the practices they liked, ignoring everything I said before, everything I was setting as my boundaries, that my fears, my pain, borders, my everything I told them about myself, my preferences was just ignored. They pushed pain even though I told them temperature and sharp sensations were a hard no. They told me they didn't believe I felt pain that strongly. Gaslighting disguised as play. And when I finally said I wanted to leave, of course they didn't stop me. Thanks God, they didn't stop me. They walked me home in the dark, trying to appear caring, like responsible dominants. But their faces were tight, disappointed, and kind of offended, because I didn't give them what they wanted.
The line between pain, play, and emotional harm is razor thin. I'm keeping YouTube safe, but the detailed breakdown of how pain becomes gaslighting, I left that on Patreon for those who need it.
The next day they manipulated me for arousing them and leaving, even though intimacy was a clear boundary we had established before from the beginning. I had another partner and we agreed that I can have a session with them, but without any too intimate practices, which they tried to ignore, but I just told them, I'm leaving, and then they were kind of offended by that. Wait a moment. They acted betrayed, as if I owned them something. Then came a real mask-off moment. They told me I should quit working with my actual rope partner, stop teaching workshops, and instead join them as a model. They would take over the entire thing, my work, my audience, my events, and I'd be in the background doing the labor while they took credit. They wanted clearly ownership of my body, my image, my skills, my future. When I refused, they turned the whole local community against me. Old school practitioners, event organizers, and gatekeepers. People suddenly stopped responding. I wasn't invited anywhere. Opportunities vanished. And I later discovered the final blow. The organizer of a big event, someone I trusted, took my payment and disappeared. No explanation, no refund. Just ghosted me after talking to that couple. It wasn't just manipulation, and it wasn't just bad dynamic. It was a small, hidden, self-contained cult.
If they can't own you, they try to make sure no one else will.
There are parts of this story I still can't put on YouTube. Names, situations, the aftermath, the psychological fallout. I broke them down privately on Patreon. For those who survived similar things, or work in kink communities and want to recognize the signs early.
It was a small, hidden, self-contained cult, built on secrecy, on hierarchy, on earning humiliation, on isolation, on dependency, on psychological testing, on removing your community ties, on convincing you that they are the only safe place. I got out because of two things. My mother, who felt something was wrong before I did, and my partner, who noticed how I changed around them. That's the thing about cults. You don't fall into them because you are weak. You fall into them because you are good, curious, open, trusting, eager to learn. They prey exactly on those traits. And I want people to know that BDSM isn't the problem here. It wasn't kink, it wasn't pain, it wasn't power exchange. It was the complete absence of consent, communication, negotiation, safety, responsibility, vulnerability, honesty. Everything that BDSM is supposed to be about. This wasn't a dynamic, this was a system. And I survived it, barely touched but deeply changed. If you're young, new, curious, excited, please hear me. No dominant has the right to isolate you, test you without negotiation, shame you, push their preferences, or tell you that you don't know yourself. If someone wants your fear, not your trust, run. If someone wants ownership, not exchange, run. If someone wants secrecy, not safety, run. Because sometimes the most dangerous cults are two people sitting in front of you, smiling and saying, "We're just here to help." That's all I wanted to tell you today. And please take it serious. You can think that you are too clever for this, but please remember, everyone can fall for it. Just, I would recommend you to understand which manipulations they all use it, and how to protect yourself. Stay safe. Subscribe me here on TikTok, and you can help my project to grow with Patreon. And here more details and more stories from Succubus there. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye!